everyone and welcome to a new video from Your Overwatch. I'm Eddie the Chump and today we're going to cover some of the most interesting revelations from a Seagull stream yesterday, where he got to play Hammond at Blizzard HQ while also speaking to a number of important Blizzard devs. He got to speak to Geoff Goodman, Scott Mercer and Jeff Kaplan, and they covered quite a lot of topics that the community is dying to hear about. As I said, I'll be going through some of the biggest subjects, and the first one that we're going to look at today is what's happening with the new Torbjorn rework. As Jeff noted on the forums a few days ago, Torb didn't make it into this PTR because he's still in a state of flux as far as the changes they're going to make to him is concerned. When asked about this, Geoff Goodman had some very enlightening things to say. I'm just going to play the first part of his answer for you so you can hear it from the horse's mouth.
Some of the stuff we've been trying is the turret is kind of thrown now, but not, it's more like Tracer ult thrown. It's not like you're hugging it across the map, it's just kind of tossed in front of you. Which is surprising, he almost saved you.
Oh my god, it was so close!
The turret throwing thing is actually surprisingly useful. It's very quick to deploy now. You can you kind of throw it on top of boxes or somewhere a little above you, or just drop it down below you a lot easier. We're trying lots of different stuff with the turrets, nothing solidified yet. Some of the ideas we tried. The turret levels up as it gets kills, automatically leveling it to 2, they don't have to hit it anymore.
Cool, I like that.
That's pretty cool. We were working with that for a while. I think that's still in there right now. And then we're trying all kinds of crazy abilities, what if we had a mini molten core as his E, or what if we, his ult was something different, and
So there's a number of ideas to unpack here. The first is, how much of a difference would it make to Torb to just be able to throw his turret down instead of having to place it? Well, when he has to place it like he does currently, he obviously has to physically be where he wants the turret to spawn. Being able to throw it separates him from it somewhat, which despite the limited range Jeff is talking about, similar to Tracer's pulse bomb, that does give him an element of freedom he hasn't had before. Also, I imagine it'd be easier to place on geometry that's perhaps above or below Torb's current reach. In my mind, I see the throw functioning in a similar way to his armor packs do. Because of that, I imagine there's going to be ways to place a turret in positions that the enemy really doesn't expect more often. Creating another angle quickly with the turret in that way could be quite powerful, especially when you also take into account they're experimenting with ways of making the turret auto-upgrade itself. So if Torb can throw his turret and not have to worry about standing next to it hitting it with a hammer for a certain amount of time, he's then free to do much more actual fighting himself, and that's the part that really interests me. Obviously old Torb was designed in an era of the game where having a defense category still made sense in principle, but as we've all seen over the game's life, the pace of the action has felt at odds with a character who has to stand still for a period of time in order to even potentially get value. Jeff said they want to make him more viable in more situations, as those old hero categories no longer make any sense, while also keeping the soul of what made Torb, well, Torb. Another experiment they've tried is having a mini molten core as an ability and give him something else as an ultimate, much like they've done with Sim. Now Jeff doesn't elaborate on that in great detail, but if I had to guess at how it functioned, I'd say it likely worked fairly similar to the current ult, but with a much shorter duration and less severe buffs to his own armor, rate of fire and turret potency. Perhaps because they've also played with his turrets auto-leveling themselves, this mini version of Molten Core only affects Torb himself. Think of it like an altered state mechanic, similar to Orisa's Fortify, with probably a similar sort of duration. I can see something like that working, but I'm sure they're very aware of just how oppressive Torb could be if overtuned, especially when you consider how strong any auto-aim mechanics can be the lower down the ranks you go. They also had a brief exchange about Torbjorn's hitbox, with Seagull feeling that he gets headshot way too easily and suggesting they make it smaller like they have done with other characters like Orisa and Winston. Jeff was certainly interested in that idea, just like he was with perhaps changing how Torb's reload works in standard Molten Core. Torb's reload is quite long, and if you have to do that once you pop his ult or during it, you are just wasting time, and that flow doesn't feel great for that character. I do kind of agree with this sentiment. I think when you pop an ult, you should be poised to commence destruction, not worrying about whether you have a full magazine. They do take a long time to earn, and they are supposed to be a hero moment for the player. Anything that gets in the way of that isn't your opponent outplaying you seems a bit redundant, at least in my opinion. The overall takeaway I had was that Blizzard want to make Torb feel awesome to use in a way that makes sense for how the game has evolved, and to do that, they're considering all kinds of different options, both minor and major. Jeff admitted that they don't really know which side of that scale the end result will be, but they're working every day to get something that works, and when they do, we'll get the full details. What do you guys think to some of the ideas Geoff mentioned? Do you like the concept of Torb not having to be tied to his turret for its placement? Do you want a mini molten core as an ability? Let me know in the comment section below. Ana changes. Now the next hero that they talk about is Ana, and despite the recent retuning of her kit, like ammo capacity and her shots going through full health teammates, there are still those in the community who believe she's not where she needs to be. Geoff's opinion is that because her kit is so powerful, especially the Bionade, they're very hesitant to change her radically. Indeed, he puts forward the idea that Blizzard see her limited mobility and weak self-healing options as a core part of her character. It's the cost, as they see it, of having such a potent healer on your team. Players are supposed to manage those weaknesses to reap the rewards. Now there is a part of me that agrees with that sentiment. Her kit is amazing, but as Seagull points out, heroes like Mercy are just easier to play, and in fact, healers have been getting stronger since the beginning of the game in general, so the healing edge that Ana used to have over other supports doesn't mean as much anymore. But there is an element that they don't cover, and that's the fact that Mercy has mid-fight res, easy dedicated healing, and damage amp. Mid-fight res is so strong, not having a Mercy in your comp even now is arguably a very bad idea, and that's the real challenge facing many support heroes. Lucio isn't getting picked that much either, apart from a few notable exceptions like the GOAT setup, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with his kit at all. If you're going to use a high mechanical cost support in your team, it's usually Zen over someone like Ana because he's absolutely top tier as well. Geoff did however talk about some of the negative reaction, especially from some top tier Anas surrounding the change to her healing passing through full health teammates. He does acknowledge that pre-healing a target you knew was about to take damage was certainly a viable strat, but overall he thinks it's actually better the way they have it now. Rein optimization. Now the interesting thing is that Seagull spoke to both Geoff Goodman and Jeff Kaplan about Rein, and on one issue they didn't exactly disagree, but there's certainly a difference in outlook. On the subject of fixing Rein, Geoff Goodman said that getting Earthshatter bug-free was their top priority. It's been mentioned before that they're almost completely re-engineering its mechanics to make it behave in a much more consistent way, and Geoff alluded to the fact that they've almost completed that task, it just wasn't ready for this version of the PTR. I'd expect it soon, as if any of the bugs that have been seen recently, like this one posted to Twitter by Kaiser of Optic Academy from a Korean streamer's testing, which shows a single Ana absorbing the entire ult and blocking the characters behind her, if that sort of thing continues, players won't be very happy. Also, the behaviour of how charging characters affect each other is being looked at. Brigitte stunning a Rein pin isn't an intended result apparently, and they're working on making those occurrences much more consistent, not only for Rein, but for other heroes like Doomfist as well. Now onto the good bit. Geoff Goodman did say there's certainly a world where they give Rein some sort of knockback reduction when he's holding his shield up, but that they're not quite ready to pull the trigger on that yet, whereas Jeff Kaplan stated he doesn't think Rein needs a direct buff, and that any adjustment to how Rein is very susceptible to various crowd control abilities is something the team has to discuss much more before ever implementing. Their opinions aren't all that different, but they're not quite the same either. I know a lot of Rein players are crying out for a passive ability that stops them being booped around all the time, and when you think about it, it doesn't make sense that a Lucio can boop Rein into the sky using just the power of Jazz, whereas doing the same to an Orisa who is simply shooting will yield a much lesser displacement. Heroes that are shooting don't fly as far, and poor Rein doesn't shoot. At least they do seem semi-open to the idea as opposed to dead against it. Perhaps they're waiting to see how Hammond affects all this as well, because he will certainly be a factor when at top speed while in ball form, or when he ground slams, which does displace opponents quite a lot. I wish I had more concrete news Rein mains, but don't give up hope quite yet. Now there were a whole host of other cool community subjects covered in the interview section with Scott Mercer, and the first one I'm going to cover is that yes, Hammond will go live to competitive 2 weeks after his initial release. Now be warned, that's 2 weeks after his release to the live server, not the PTR. This is also why the new sim wasn't available in comp on the last day of Season 10. They made the decision to wait with sim because they have changed her quite a lot, so expect her available in Season 10 about 10 days in. Scott also clarified that the Overwatch League playoffs will be played on the previous live patch for the same reason, so that's new Hanzo at the Overwatch League level for the very first time. I can't wait, and I got the impression Seagull can't either. Next we have some news about a long requested feature, better colorblind options. Scott confirmed that they are being worked on as we speak, and I bet there's many of you watching to whom that is music to your ears. Jeff Kaplan noted later on in the interview that you'll actually be able to adjust the outlines on enemies to best suit your version of color blindness, so this feature does seem quite extensive. Now the next item is a big one. When asked about guilds or clans for Overwatch, Scott said it's something we're very interested in, but the way he said it made me think they already have systems built, they just can't talk about them yet. We are due for that extra social feature at the end of summer/fall. I think this is what that is. And there was also more good news in the confirmation that yes, Blizzard are working on bringing a replay system to Overwatch. We've known about this for a while, but the exchange between Scott and Seagull was really illuminating. Seagull, as an Overwatch League pro, has access to an early form of the demo system. It's how he learned to play D.Va so well in such a short space of time. He just watched a lot of other pro D.Vas VODs, and Scott also shares the opinion that as far as a learning tool goes, there is nothing better than being able to watch the perspective of a great player on whatever hero you want to learn. As if speaking directly to me, he said, watching Jonak's perspective only would give you much more of an insight on Zen compared to just watching what the observer does when he plays. I can't wait for this feature. They're well aware of just how valuable it would be to players and content creators alike, they just want to get it Blizzard polished, which I can understand. Another feature that we've long been exponents for on this channel is the inclusion of in-client tournament systems, and Scott said it's something that Overwatch team are very interested in. In fact, Scott worked on the Warcraft 3 version himself. Now I've made videos talking about how they could offer incentives for weekend tournaments like Destiny does or like Dota 2 does for its version of this, and I still think giving winners some small but exclusive items for winning is a fantastic idea. Also, I think it's something that could work well with the clan/guild system when those arrive too. There's so much potential to this kind of feature, and if the success of LFG is anything to go by, there is a hunger for more team-based competitive content at all levels. So I think the earlier this makes it into the game, the better. Now, Jeff Kaplan's section of the interview was perhaps the most light-hearted, and the first thing Jeff said with some amusement was that he had read across the internet that they had single-handedly saved Overwatch with LFG, and then as soon as they dropped the Hammond trailer showing him to be a hamster, they had apparently destroyed the game forever. The diverse reaction to Hammond is a common theme throughout the interview section actually, and Jeff offers some insight into the fact that even amongst people on the team, Hammond was always quite controversial. Likewise, Hammond wasn't a recent development either. He was actually one of the earliest heroes that they iterated on, although he wasn't always a hamster. When first created, the hero was simply a mech, not a ball, and actually his kit was quite different. The original hero had powers based around magnetism, like attracting targets into their proximity or perhaps even enemy fire away from teammates. Side note, Jeff hopes those ability ideas make their way into the game in the future. So Hero 38 confirmed, you heard it here first. But at some point even he doesn't remember the artist responsible for the ideation of the hero introduced the idea of a hamster pilot, and it immediately proved immensely popular with some and decidedly not with others. Of course we see that reflected in public opinion now, but I do think Hammond is a quality addition. Part of the joy of the Overwatch world, at least for me, is that no idea is off the table. Jeff does go on to talk about Hammond's history with Winston as well, who apparently, despite not being best buds in story terms, are certainly friendly, and also Winston is one of the only heroes Hammond can naturally communicate with, because they're both animals and that's how that works seemingly. Aside from these lore specifics, Jeff did talk about some game balance topics as well. Firstly, Jeff asked Seagull what he thought about the new Symmetra, and when told that her beam laser seems a bit too hard to utilize, Jeff said they have to be careful with ramp up damage abilities. There needs to be a skill requirement and a payoff moment for that extra damage. If they make it too accessible, she could easily be far too strong. On the subject of Sim, Jeff asked Seagull if he thought the new Sim would ever get played at the Overwatch League level, to which Seagull replied, her teleporter has the potential to change how teams move around and manage cooldowns. Some team attacks and pushes require very specific actions to be completed in the right order to be successful. The new Sim could do all that work with just one cooldown potentially. He used Horizon as the example in the interview, but it's very interesting to hear a pro talk about her in those terms overall. We will have to wait to see if it pans out like that though, as she's not going to be available in the Season 1 playoffs. What do you guys think? Will she ever get used at the pro level in the future? What did you think of the magnetism hero concepts Geoff talked about from Hammond's design history? Could they be a part of a future Heroes kit? Let me know in the comments section below. And if you want to listen to the whole set of interviews, I'll be linking them in the description as well as Seagull's stream. We're big fans and we're just as happy as Geoff was that he's streaming Overwatch again. I really hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to leave a rating. If you never want to miss another video of ours again, please click the bell icon next to the subscribe button on our channel to join the notification squad. You'll be in great company. And finally, please follow the Your Overwatch Twitter, where you can find updates about new videos and other cool stuff. I've been Eddie the Chump, and until next time.